Right, welcome to a pod full of saints. We're on series 3, episode 2. That means we've got our first competitive match of a season to look at. And the three of us looking at it are myself, David Tavener. Over there in the yellow shirt is Lee Wood.
David, how are you, my friend? Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. And Jake Ellacott, somewhere underneath that mess, he's also got a yellow shirt.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Dave.
Right. As we say, we've got a first competitive match of a season to look at. And first game of the season, well, it's a tough one for Allison's boys against the many people's title favourites, but went there and stuffed them 4-0. Oh, hang on. Oh, no, that's Lee Allison. So, sorry. How did Ian's lot get on?
Not quite as well, from what I understand. The reports reached the north in the evening that we'd lost, and we 3-1 in the end.
Yeah, Jake was up at Leeds. He's got better things to do than watch St Albans, obviously. What did you make of it, Lee?
I mean, what a game to start off with. I thought it was frustrating, but I thought we were quite fortunate not to be out of the game completely by half time, if I'm honest. They had a very, very productive first half. We showed sort of glimpses of our quality. I think Akinola on the right-hand side was absolutely, he had their left back on toast at every given opportunity. And the only way they sort of stopped him is by trying to sort of break his legs. But unfortunately, I thought we were quite naive defensively, Tavs, if I'm honest. I thought we missed a big presence in the centre of the park as well. But we had chances, though. We did have some really good chances. I think second half we came alive. And to be honest with you, I don't think Dartford would have had too many complaints if we would have sort of snatched it late on, if I'm honest, because we had some glorious, some opportunities there, but the quality of their players shone through in the end. And I think they had some good set pieces, but ultimately their quality shone through. But what a game to start off with down at Clarence Park.
I made that clip about we were against one of the top rated sides in the division, and we were. There's no two ways about it. Dartford are going to be up there, and we'll be coming on to that more later with the other sides that are likely to be challenging with them. And I thought first half, once they settled down, they dominated the half. They could have had a couple of goals. They missed a couple of good chances. They eventually got one deep into injury time, and that set them up nicely for the second half. They were going down the hill second half, and I was a bit worried. I thought they might take us to the cleaners a bit. I don't mean give us a good thrashing, but win comfortably. But it didn't work out like that. We had the better of it, kicking up the hill, but we just couldn't create much. We only had a couple of half decent chances, really, and their keeper had a very quiet time. The goal we got was a scramble. It was nice to see Tom get an early goal in the season. But did you really see us getting a second goal? I didn't. We had a few penalty appeals during the game. Mind you, so did they. Did you have any view on any of those, Lee?
Can I just say, in terms of the penalty appeals, I thought Aziz, when he went down in the box for them, I thought theirs was, it looked everything to be a penalty. He did that intelligent thing where he just cut across our defender and was just waiting for the whole contact. But one thing I've got to mention is the simulation from our players, especially in the first half. I don't know whether I'm spending too much time with you, Tavs, or whether I expect a little bit more from my St Albans City team, but the simulation was absolutely farcical, borderlining on embarrassing. Sean Jeffers, for example, in the first half, went down when no one was anywhere near him, so much so that about 3 or 4 fellas to the right of me were starting to laugh. It was that embarrassing. And he wasn't the only one. Zane, he was looking for a penalty when he turned the defender in the first half, when it would have been far easier just to get a left foot shot off and he might have scored. I know this is whole part and parcel of the game now, Taz, and I know it is sort of creeping in, but, on Saturday, there were a few instances where it was a little bit silly and it made us look average, if I'm honest. I thought the penalty shout that I was looking at in the second half, when Rice was brought down in the box, but no one really sort of seemed to pick up on that. I thought that was probably more of a penalty than Zane's in the first half, if I'm honest. But the referee, I know that Ian, going by his post-match, wasn't exactly complimentary about the match officials. But yeah, we could have had 3 penalties each.
I think you know, Lee, the cheating in the modern game, it's one of my bugbears. It's with the players, it's with the coaches, it's with the managers, their attitude to winning for any means and abusing match officials. The FA should stamp down on it, but they never will, unfortunately. Some of the things there, Ian Allinson and the others on that side, they thought that linesman kept getting offsides wrong, which didn't help. Flagging too late, but with the offside laws it is nowadays, maybe he's supposed to do that. Who knows? It's an ever-changing feast, that one. The other penalties, I think like you, some people thought most of them, no, the referee probably got them right. So we weren't going to score that way. But the thing that worries me is the lack of goal chances we created. You said about we need a presence in midfield, a younger David Noble, certainly, but I felt they had more speed than us as well through the team.
Absolutely. And I think it was quite telling when Goddard came on later on in the second half that you can see the quality that he's that much higher than the people around him. At the minute, he had that time on the ball, but he was fast with it. He was quick intelligently as well. You know, he was always looking for the forward pass, trying to penetrate in behind the back line of Dartford. And if he can start, if he's fit and he can start and he can really influence matches, he will be key for us. But as I said to you last week, I think we are a striker short because Jeffers, he always commanded sort of 2, sometimes even 3 around him. And yes, that brings other players into the game. But if those players aren't of any quality or are sort of yet to get into the game, then we're not going to benefit from that, Tabs.
I loved that one time when Johnny Goddard and defender in front of him, he just pushed it past him, just a good old-fashioned wing play. And it's that directness that excites crowds. And we don't get it too often in modern football nowadays. And so it was great to see. Hopefully more to come.
Absolutely.
3 debutants on Saturday, Hugh Dawson, Callum Adebayo and Johnny Goddard. Well, we've already touched on Johnny. What do you make of Callum Adebayo in the centre of defence?
I think he did okay. But as I say, I think collectively the defensive unit was poor, if I'm honest. I think I don't really want to sort of single out anyone, but Joy McKenna needs to do better. You know, he was left ball watching for the chance when Robertson hit the bar. He had that atrocious sort of effort to sort of try and cut out a pass in the first half, which led to Aziz running through on goal. I think collectively, defensively, they need to work on that. But that will come, Dave. You know, we can't just sort of sit there and start throwing people under the bus after game 1. It was a hot day. It was high tempo, which I quite enjoyed, to be honest with you. But defensively, we need to sort of show up because we got exposed for large periods of that game on Saturday, and that'll happen again.
3 goals conceded in that one game. I think it took us 6 or 7 games to do that last season to get accumulated a lot of goals against us, shall we say. The other debutant was teenager Hugh Dawson, of course, from the academy.
Yeah.
To be thrown into a game like that was very tough for a local youngster. I thought in the first half, he's under orders just to play it short and keep possession, which he did. But the thing, he got out-muscled, which is no surprise for a kid like that to be thrown into a game like that against a very experienced side. You would expect it, and it did happen. I think Ian was right to take him off. But in the second half, he did get in a couple of really hard challenges, and he won the ball. He did an awful rugby tackle, which he should be ashamed of, for which he got booked. But that side, there's enough there. He will come on during the season, no doubt about it.
I was just going to say, there was certainly enough there. His agenda was literally win ball, pass ball, wasn't it? And it was no more than that. And at times he did it really, really, really well. But as you say, once they got the bit in between their teeth, particularly first half, they were overrun and he was just sort of chasing shadows. However, when he did get that a little bit of help and he sort of grew into the game a little bit more and he got that composure. And after that, I think he did okay. And that, you know, games like that will sort of benefit him in the long run because, you know, it's all like a learning curve for him now, isn't it?
Did you keep tabs on the game as it went on, Jake?
I did, yeah. So before the game, obviously, I saw the team and I saw that Dawson was in midfield, so I was a bit concerned about that. But I'm glad, good to hear he came along. And yeah, I mean, it's just so disappointing to concede those two late goals. And I just watched the highlights back earlier, and the first and the second goals we could see the defending is some like really really poor compared to how we defended for most of last season. It actually reminded me of some of the defending we saw during the 1920 season at times at the back, where the defence just were all over at times. So that was poor, and I think Ian will be really disappointed with that. But yeah, I think as well with the release of a certain player the next day as well, I think some Saints fans will be a bit surprised as to the way the defence is shaping up at the minute. But we knew this game was going to be tough. You know, it was going to be difficult, and we know Dartford are a really good team. And I will say, it was on the highlights, it was good to see such a healthy crowd at Clarence Park. It looked really good atmosphere, sounded decent. And yeah, I'm sure there's positives and negatives, but we know it doesn't get any easier on Saturday coming against Dorking. So not ideal at all, but I'm sure Ian's got a plan.
Well, we're going to come on to James Coloxy next. There was a rumour going around Saturday he was going to be released, and it got announced last night. Yes, I think it's a bit of a surprise. I thought he wasn't in the side because he went off half-time at Cheshunt the previous week, presumably with an injury. But obviously there's a bit more to it than that. You two haven't heard anything, have you?
No, it was a bit of a surprise. The only thing I've heard is he may be off one of our local rivals, shall we say, just down the road. So I wouldn't be surprised if James turns up at our old friends at Vauxhall Road very soon. But I was really surprised myself. I thought came on leaps and bounds last season. I thought he was brilliant. He grew into the role alongside Joy McKenna, and I'm really surprised to see him released pretty much as the season's got underway. Obviously, there must be something more behind it, but yeah, and I think it's always a shame as well. There was a lot of responses on the social media last night I saw that said really disappointed, and I saw some comments on the forum as well. It's always a shame to see a local lad leave again, especially one that's been here a few times, come back, seemed to be playing really well last season. So it's a shame, and well, hopefully he doesn't come back to haunt us.
Well, he's having a bit of a yo-yo time between us and Hemel, isn't he? If that's where he ends up, of course. Lee, what do you think of putting Tom Bender back in the middle? I thought he did quite well there last season.
I agree, and I think he can sort of influence the game better in that position. I think he can sort of command it. I know he got a bit of a torrid time in the second half at left back on Saturday, but by his own admission as well. But I like Tom in the centre. I honestly do, because I think he reads the game better there. He hasn't got to make as many of those sort of silly last-ditch challenges that often get him into so much trouble over the course of time. And, he and Michael Clark as well in the centre, it works. There's speed there, there's intelligence there, there's height there, and there's strength there. So for me, Ian's got to look at that. There's obviously something underlining to let Kolotsky go one game into the season. I don't know whether Ian was hoping to get someone else in on the eve of the season, and then he was just sort of retaining Kolotsky for that purpose. But I don't know. But ultimately, mate, yeah, Tom Bender in the centre, I've got no problem with that at all.
Yeah, we will then need to bring in a left back, won't we?
Yeah. Anyone got Luke Warner-Ely's number?
Scott Cousins still playing?
Oh.
Right, are we done with events on the pitch?
Yeah, I think you want to talk about things off the pitch now, don't you, Dave?
Well, you two are saying there's a bit of activity concerning the matchday programme on social media, whatever that is.
Yeah, I've seen a few comments, and I think Leah's as well. Just people, I think, disappointed with what they saw in the programme. Obviously, it was free online, so fair enough. I think that was a good move. But the content, I don't believe, it didn't go down well with fans, from what I understand. Lee, what have you heard from supporters?
Just on the match day that people were asking for the programmes, and there were none. And obviously, I only saw the same sort of comments on the forum about the quality of it. I haven't read it all, to be honest with you, but it didn't look as though it didn't smack of any effort that's sort of gone into it, which is disappointing considering how much effort has gone in off the pitch at the club over the course of the summer. a match day program is a very divisive thing now, isn't it? You know, people want it online, some people want it printed. A match day program can make the club a hell of a lot of money if it's done properly, and at the minute it's not being done. So it's something that the club needs to look at, because obviously advertisers will want to look at that to see whether they're getting their money's worth in terms of commercial packages as well, because I know that the program is being used as a carrot in one of the many aspects of sort of getting commercial partners into the club. But yeah, I mean, it's poor quality, and hopefully over the course of the next sort of few weeks the club can iron those out and get a quality publication back onto the terraces.
I think one of you said over the weekend, I think it was you, Jake, about the amount of advertising in there. And it's advertising a concert by some group was taking place in June. Well, that's useful.
I think you can totally understand why supporters are so disappointed, because obviously pre-COVID, you had the program, etc., in place. You could go up and get one, and they come back to the ground, and suddenly there's no program. There wasn't seemed to be much communication about it as to what was going on with that. Fans weren't really prepared for that, and obviously, you know, football fans are creatures of habit. They're going to want to pick up their program. They're going to get to, they're back at their ground that they love, and suddenly something isn't there that they used to get. So I can totally see why they're very disappointed. And I think as well, I saw a few comments on the forum that said we can moan as much as we want, but we doubt this will change, which I think is a real shame, which I hope the club are willing to demonstrate that they will listen to comments, even about things like programs, even in this media age of digital, everything's gone online. Matchday program is still so important to so many fans.
Club listening on the evidence of the last couple of years. You're being optimistic there. But for those that did look at the programme, there was virtually no content. There was the Dartford stuff in there. One of the owners had written something in there, and that was pretty much it. Where was the club news? Fixture page had Saturday's game down twice, so I don't know when the replay is. It's got to be so much better if they're going to do the programme. I think we spoke about it on the podcast maybe 2 years ago, early on. He was directing more at you, Lee, because your business down those lines. Our programme's going to disappear.
I mean, I've never been busier this year now, this season. And before, we are going to get people who sort of come on to say, oh, match day programmes, come on, fellas, get with the sort of times and all of that. I can absolutely guarantee you match day programmes are fundamental to a progressive football club, because it can be an only source of news for some supporters. Also, it is a very, very lucrative revenue stream. And if you sort of correlate that in a printed programme to that with an online programme, you can combine the two, you can amalgamate them and do much more online. But it's the tangible thing of having that in your hand. It's the match day feeling of going to the game, buying a programme, having a beer or whatever it may be. And if the club don't want to do it, don't do it, because it will just make them look stupid. And we don't want that. We do not want that. But it just, at the minute, the effort that they're showing just smacks of they just basically can't be asked.
Well, the programme was digital. Also digital was getting tickets to the game. And why there was no mention on the website saying you can only get matchday tickets online, I just don't know. That's a complete failure of a club. It should have advised supporters about. I didn't see the Hearts ad last week. I don't know if they had anything about it, telling supporters you can only get tickets online, because that's our only newspaper now, really. I suspect there wasn't. The club's got to get its messages out there better. And well, you're involved with football clubs, Lee. Not taking cash and cards on the day. What on earth is that all about? Cash is still legal tender in this country.
It's up to the individual clubs, isn't it? You know, but if you're going to go down that route, you have to make sure that the message is clear and the message is loud. Because ultimately, when we turned up at the game on Saturday, there were still people, elderly gentleman in front of me with his cash in his hand. And then there was a whole sort of kerfuffle. He was trying to find his card, and then they wouldn't let, he was trying to find his card and he wouldn't let him in. And then they could let him in because he's now found his card. And there was a queue. There was a queue right the way back over the railway bridge on York Road. And what I would say is that there were some volunteer issues on Saturday, which were out of the club's control, which didn't help the process of getting fans into the ground. But yes, absolutely, maybe it's, I know we talked about this last week as well. the clubs need to look at what the fans are saying about the match day experience, because the club have put a lot of sort of, praise on the fact of all the work that's been done in the off season once fans are inside, but they can't get inside in the process. Then that's not a lot of good.
Of course, we know what a club's like. They look at it, good attendance, they will brush aside a lot of the complaints. And if they're going to cut off, it's mostly the elderly supporters who are not going to go online and buy their tickets that way. And to cut off their people who that has been their source of enjoyment for many, many years, way before most of the people in the boardroom even born. That's a bad move, a bad move.
Absolutely. This club's been going since 1908. This club isn't from 2019. We have so many supporters, as we know, everyone that used to be under the Coca-Cola stand, etc., have been going for so many years, and you cannot cut them off. And you also, again, we talked about this last week, you're cutting off those people that are just in St Albans, having a little wander, look around the park, and they just want to turn up to a game, pay a bit of cash on the turnstile, etc. Just these people don't necessarily follow the club on social media, go to the club website, but by all accounts, there was no mention of it on the club website. The only reason I knew was because it saw it on the Twitter feed. It is just absolutely bizarre to me. And again, I think we mentioned this last week. It wouldn't be that difficult to put something in place where you have one turnstile, particularly maybe the one at the Hatfield Road end that they don't particularly use an awful amount, and just have something there in place for those fans that do turn up with cash or pay on the day. I don't see why it's difficult. And of course, when you have volunteering issues, which there have been this weekend, understandable. But there's clearly no plan in place for that beforehand. There was no mention of anything like that. So, yeah, this was inevitable, really, wasn't it? That these issues were going to happen. And by all accounts, it wasn't just isolated either. It was quite a few people that were impacted. And the club is obsessed with this good, positive view that it wants to have in the community. But those people are now going to think, well, why should I bother? Why all this hassle to go see a game? It's just not worth it.
Talking of publicity, oh, sorry, Lee. I remember the club had quite a struggle with the council to get permission to have fixture boards up in Hatfield Road. We've got two up there now, been up there for years, and not a single one of his summer's game or Saturday's game was put on that fixture board. And anybody walking past sees a fixture board, particularly from the opposition, they see that. It does not reflect well on the club.
No, not at all, Tabs. And I know, you would have to look at it, wouldn't you? The owners or any of the media team would think, well, you know what? We've got two boards, prime real estate on the outside of Clarence Park. Get them fixed and get them functioning again, because, it's just that subliminal messaging, isn't it? All of the time of having our name out there and who we're playing and what time and when we're playing. But on the positive side of that, the fans that did manage to get into the ground on Saturday, I thought the atmosphere was absolutely superb. And I know aesthetically they're not particularly pleasing, but the covered ends really did help. I know that Dartford bought a fair, they must be what 200, 250 with them. So, yeah. But, they played their part. They were noisy little oiks. And then it sort of took us for the sort of second half for our sort of teams to sort of get back into the sort of spirit of things and started chanting and stuff. And I think it actually made for a really good atmosphere in the end. And I hope that everyone who wants to come to the game is able to come into the game and experience that atmosphere for themselves in the future.
Yeah, our lot were slow to wake up. You're dead right. First half, they completely outshouted. Hardly heard a beep from our lot. But the second half, it was a bit more even as we came back into the game. But hopefully in the future, it won't wait for the team to wake up. They'll wake the team up. Well, you'll be back for the next one, Jake, hopefully, so you can get them going.
Oh, absolutely. I will say, I thought the covered ends looked a lot better with actually sizable amounts of supporters underneath them. They just looked a bit more natural, I thought. And also, interestingly, the dugouts were a bit of a surprise when I saw them on the highlights. They're hefty old things, aren't they? I saw, Dave, I think you made a comment, didn't you? I read earlier over the weekend about the view from the main stand might be even more restricted.
Well, it's funny, actually. I spoke to Graham Griffin at Radio Verulam today. We did a thing for next week's programme. And he said, because I was sitting behind it, I said, your view must have been worse than ever. He said, no, it was fine. You could actually see through them.
Yeah.
He said, that was fine. But putting that great big badge on the side of one of them is ridiculous. Anybody looking from the two sides is going to have their view shut off a bit from that. But he felt directly behind it. It wasn't too bad at all. And not a lot worse than it was before. But generally, as we will an overview from that stand, is not the best in the world.
No.
Nothing you can do about that. It's a 100-year-old stand.
Exactly.
Right. Elsewhere in division, Havant and Waterlooville, as expected, 3-0 win over Welling. They spent big. I think they'd have been looking for that, expecting that, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's some good goals as well scored, but sounds like it is a bit of a procession for Havant, and I don't know what Welling are going to do this season. They could be relegation, they could be top 6, who knows?
I think they could struggle. The other one of the top 3 sides expected, of course, Dorking Wanderers, where we go next Saturday. A 1-0 defeat at Concord. All right, they were in the FA Trophy final 2 years ago, but played last year or whatever it was, or this year, whenever it was played. But don't expect them to lose that. They weren't helped by James Pryor having a penalty saved.
No, but as you say, I think that's a real surprise for Dorking. And I think hopefully they don't lash back against us on Saturday, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, we'll move on to it now. And admission is on the gate, pay at the gate. It's not online. I originally thought it was. And it's only £12 for adults. I mean, they're not going to get anywhere charging that sort of fee, for goodness sake.
I suppose it's easy to do, isn't it, when you've got some bloke that
speak.
Yeah, when you've got some bloke who just funds everything for the club. Deary me.
Well, I, for one, David, am very much looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be an exceptional festival of football, which I think we're going to play extremely well, and I'm looking forward to it. Jacob,
well, it's good to judge ourselves against two of the top sides in the first 2 games. We know where we're going to be, roughly, how far short, or if we're up with them. We weren't that far off on Saturday, really.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I know that it did look in the first half that they were going to sort of tear us a new one, but we did. We've got some quality players. We see this, and we know this on a weekly basis. Don't forget that last year we were commanding top sort of spot taps, and we don't just sort of turn into a bad team in shape of like a few months. Dorking Wanderers are not Barcelona. They're a good side, yes. They've got some good players, yes. But we've also got some good players, and a free week of training, and I'm sure that Ian will get the boys rearing up in time for Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're missing again, aren't you, Jake?
Yeah, I don't think I'm there again. I mean, what am I like? Oh,
don't fancy it, mate.
Nah, Dorking's quite far, isn't it? Part-time fan. But I mean, getting it from what you guys would say, I mean, would you make any changes to the team? I mean, it sounds like the midfield maybe would be a possible area that we could maybe try and see someone come in. But when you look at the bench, apart from David Noble, who else can come on really and come into that team to start on Saturday?
Well, you got Liam Sol there. I think he's a little bit short at the moment, to be honest. And that's what we're here for, to be honest. So, yes, our options there, I feel, are limited. I think people have mentioned about the squad before. It does look a bit light.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Goddard, could potentially come in, I guess, as well. But when you do look at that bench, it just, for me, I just do worry a little bit as to the strength and depth of it. And obviously, it's, as we talked about last week, it's a bit easier this year because it isn't, some Saturday, Tuesday in August. But when you've got 2 really tough games, and we know Dorking are strong, even though we haven't played them in the 2 years that they've been in this division, it's going to be really hard, isn't it?
I tell you what is hard, mate, is trying to listen to you because your connection keeps dropping out. I don't know whether it's your beard is sort of interfering with the whole Wi-Fi system, mate. But it's absolutely atrocious.
I'll just stay quiet.
I thought it was the best he's ever sounded, Lee.
I agree with him, though. I mean, more for me, but I actually agree with Jake, the fact that we have got some good players. And I think Goddard could be the key here, because you don't bring a player of that quality into your side to let him sit on the bench unless he's injured or unless there's a particular game plan that he doesn't fit into, in which point, why bring him in the first place? You've got to play your best team, especially against a team like Dorking, when they're going to be high tempo, high pressure. You want your quality players on the ball first and foremost, don't you?
Here we go.
Yeah, sounds sensible.
While we're talking about you two, might as well do his predictions for it.
I'll I'll go.
Well, I did so well, didn't I, last week, to be fair? Although it could have been sort of 2-1 City, but there we go. I'm going to go for a score draw, maybe a 1-1 draw, and I'm being hello, Jacob's putting the 2-1 up there. I'm going to go for a score draw.
Jake?
2-1.
2?
2-1 or 1-2?
2-1. 2-1.
Come on.
2-1
I
to
think
the
he's going
Saints.
for us, Lee. Right, okay.
Well, he's a
I wonder
fool.
he's not going.
Good time.
I started off with that bit about Lee Allinson. What a result that was, 4-0 down at Truro for Hendon. There's a few of our old boys in that Hendon team. And talking of old boys, JJ O'Donnell had a lot of injuries for his career. Now with Blythe Spartans, scored both of their goals in a win against Alfreton Town. Some other old boys who scored: Gus Sal, Spirus Manta scored for Royston. Craig McCall-Smith had a penalty saved, playing for Bedford. David Keenley side scored equaliser for Welling. Lewis Toomey, he's still going around. He scored for Burko in a win against Biggleswade. And do you remember a player we signed during the summer, Luke Brown?
Right. What happened to him?
He went back home, didn't he? He scored for Hitchin on Saturday.
Mm.
I thought he was only doing home games. I didn't think he liked travelling out from Hitchin.
So, you know that we've been absolutely basically coating off social media and online for about the last 40 minutes. I believe we're now on Twitter. And Jacob's got all the details of us on Twitter.
Can you actually hear me now?
Tragically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're on Twitter at Podful of Saints. We'll get Dave to put a link in the description of this video. And so, yeah, if fans want to contact us, ask a question, they can. Woohoo!
Can you
What
pay your
more do you
electricity
want?
bill, Jake?
Right. On that bombshell.
Tuesday night, B team, reserve team, whatever you want to call them, Tuesday the 17th of August, 7:45 kickoff there at home to Sandridge Rovers. I hope to be there, and all season ticket holders, those games are included in your ticket. So if you want to go, get down there. And if you don't want to go, don't get down there.
Oh, brilliant.
Right. Good.
Right, we'll see you all next week.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.